We have discussed many of the international relations main current affairs topics. This week we will be discussing about the Rohingya crisis, which has been frequently in news in the recent days. First, let us take a look at who are the Rohingya people in Myanmar. The Rohingya are an ethnic group largely comprising of Muslims who can be seen in the western part of Myanmar, particularly in the least developed state in Myanmar called the Rakhine state. So although many say that Rohingya is an ethnic group, some people criticize that you cannot use the term Rohingya. Rohingya is not comprising of a single ethnic group, but it is a political group. That has been another one criticism about using that term, particular term Rohingya. And Rohingya people speak a dialect of Bengali opposed to the local Burmese language which is being spoken widely in Myanmar. And according to many of the historians as well as the Rohingya, there have been Muslim population in Myanmar from the 9th century onwards, but it is widely agreed by majority of the historians that most of the Rohingya came into Myanmar during the 19th century as well as the 20th century during the British colonial rule or the British colonial administration of Myanmar. So the Myanmarese government considers Rohingya as illegal migrants or Bengali Muslims who has been brought to Myanmar by the erstwhile British colonial administration. When Myanmar became independent, before Myanmar became independent, there was the Second World War, and during the Second World War time period, the Myanmarese military joined its forces with the Japanese army in order to fight the British colonial administration of Myanmar, but at that time the Rohingya supported the British government. And there was a military conflict between the two groups during that particular time period. And even when Myanmar became independent, the Rohingya started asking for a separate state or an autonomous state in Myanmar, as well as some of them even expressed their views to join the then East Pakistan, or what we call the Bangladesh right now. Anyway, when Myanmar became independent, the democratic government was established in Myanmar initially, but later military dictatorship or military junta government came in Myanmar, and in 1982 the military junta passed the Burmese citizenship law, and that Burmese citizenship law, it abolished the citizenship of the Rohingya people in Myanmar. And there were severe restrictions placed on the Rohingyas. They were thrown out of their own land and homes. There were even restrictions on movement and citizenship with respect to the Rohingyas in Myanmar after that 1982 Burmese citizenship law. So they were considered as resident foreigners or associate citizens by the Myanmarese government after that 1982 Burmese citizenship law. And that has been a major source of the Rohingya crisis. Now, the United Nations accuses the military junta of Myanmar in conducting an ethnic cleansing in the Rakhine state of Myanmar. And the military junta, so far, it has deported around thousands of Rohingyas to Bangladesh, saying that there is no Rohingya population indigenous to Myanmar. These are Bengali Muslims who illegally migrated to Myanmar during the colonial time period. And according to the United Nations, Rohingya is considered to be one of the most persecuted or one of the most hunted down and suffering minorities in the entire world. And the United Nations High Commission for Refugees or the UN Refugee Agency places them among the most vulnerable groups of the forcefully displaced section. So you can see Rohingyas are facing that kind of a severe human rights violation situation in Myanmar. In 2012, there was sectarian violence between Rohingyas and the Buddhist majority in Rakhine due to a rape happened in the Rakhine state of a Buddhist woman, and that rape happened in a majority Rohingya territory. And after that, there was a huge riot, and there was sectarian violence between the Rohingyas and the Rakhine Buddhist natives. And the government had to move around 1 million of Rohingyas to refugee camps due to that sectarian violence between the Buddhist majority in Myanmar as well as the minority Muslims in Myanmar. So even though this is a political conflict, now a religious color is being added to that particular conflict. Myanmar was ruled by a military junta for a long time period, but from 2011 onwards, there has been political reforms in Myanmar. Myanmar has been slowly releasing the opposition leaders from prison. It has been trying to improve the human rights track record of the country, and in 2015, the first general election in Myanmar was conducted, and the National League for Democracy, led by a favorite icon of democracy, Aung San Suu Kyi, won that 2015 election, and the close confidante of Aung San Suu Kyi, Hidin Kyo, became the new president of Myanmar, as Aung San Suu Kyi was barred from being the president due to certain clauses in Myanmar's constitution which was inserted by the military. So Aung San Suu Kyi's husband as well as her children are British citizens, and due to that she could not be the president of Myanmar due to certain clauses in the constitution. So anyway, in 2015 democracy came in Myanmar, but even that democracy in Myanmar didn't bring much change for the situation of the Rohingyas in Myanmar. Now, what has happened recently on the Rohingya crisis? Why has there been a lot of Rohingya refugee crisis after August 2017? In August 2017, there was a militant attack in the Rakhine state of Myanmar. A group of Islamic militants or a group of Rohingya militants called the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, or the ARSA, made a coordinated attack on around 30 police posts as well as an army base in the Rakhine state on August 25, 2017. And this Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, it was earlier known as Haraka al-Yaqeen. ARSA is basically an armed guerrilla outfit which has been operating in Myanmar, and it has been active since 2016. Until then, it was called under the name Haraka al-Yaqeen, and this Haraka al-Yaqeen was again a major proponent of the various riots and other problems in Myanmar during 2012 also. ARSA claims that its aim is to establish a democratic Muslim states for the Rohingya in Myanmar. But the Myanmarese government and its intelligence agencies have been reporting that this Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, or the ARSA, has links with the various radical Islamic terror networks like Al-Qaeda, Islamic State and all. And some of the intelligence agencies from Bangladesh and India has often been accusing the ARSA of having links with the Pakistani ISI as well as transnational terrorist groups based in Pakistan like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, etc. Although the ARSA consistently denies any such allegations, many of the Indian intelligence officials have said that the ARSA could be a security threat for India. Anyway, after this August 2017 coordinated attacks in the Rakhine state of Myanmar, the military launched a counter-attack in which around 59 of the insurgents was killed as well as 12 security personnel were killed in that particular operation. So the military kick-started clearance operations to root out the ARSA, but again that led to severe human rights violations against the Rohingya community by the military junta, or Tatmadaw is another term used to refer to the Myanmarese military. Villages of the Rohingya were being tortured by the military. It has led to severe civilian deaths. Rohingya youths were picked up for interrogation by the military and all. Now, two countries that has been severely impacted due to the Rohingya crisis has been India and Bangladesh. Especially Bangladesh has been a huge victim of this influx of Rohingya refugees. After this August 2017 incident, around 410,000 Rohingya Muslims fled to the neighboring Bangladesh. And even in the past, like around over the past 2 decades, around 5 lakh Rohingya refugees has been fleeing to Bangladesh. The Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has taken an active stance on the Rohingya issue. She has urged the United States to put pressure on the Myanmar government to stop the exodus of the Rohingyas. The United States had sanctions on the Myanmarese government until very recently, until the democratic process was established in Myanmar. Bangladesh opened its border for Rohingyas upon the UNHCR's request recently, but still the Rohingyas are facing a lot of issues in Bangladesh. These Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh are being held at overcrowded refugee camps at Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is again a very underdeveloped country. It is one of the least developed countries. It again has a lot of socio-economic challenges. And the Rohingya crisis has only increased the wars in Bangladesh. Now, what about the Rohingyas in India? How will the Rohingya influx affect the national security concerns of India? The Ministry of Home Affairs of India, which deals with the internal security challenges, has estimated that there are around 40,000 Rohingyas in India, and they have reached India from Bangladesh through the land route. And the MHA states that these Rohingya refugees are illegal migrants to India. They are not refugees, and they will be deported soon. This has been a major security concerns. Many of the Rohingyas were found from territories like Hyderabad, Kerala and all, with all the legal documents like Aadhaar and all, which are being forged by the Rohingya people along with the help of the local agents. And this stance taken by the Ministry of Home Affairs as well as the present Indian government have surprised many of the foreign analysts, given India's track record of accepting refugees. See, whenever these kind of refugee crises as well as humanitarian crisis situations happened around the world, India has always taken a magnanimous stand. See, for example, in the Tibet region, when there was the Chinese annexation of Tibet, there were around like 120,000 Tibetan refugees fleeing into India, and India gladly accepted them and built settlements for them at places like Dharmashala in Himachal Pradesh. Then again, when the 1971 Bangladeshi Liberation War happened, there were millions of Bangladeshi refugees coming to India, and again India accommodated these people. India gave out socio-economic aid to these people. So India has always taken such a magnanimous humanitarian stand to such crises. India, being the world's largest democracy and all, has that kind of a responsibility. This has been surprising many people around the globe. But the Ministry of Home Affairs maintains the position that the Rohingya refugees are a burden on the limited resources of the country, as well as they aggravate the security challenges of the nation. The Intelligence Bureau as well as other intelligence agencies operating in the country has been stating that many of the Rohingya militants have contacts with the Pakistani Inter-Service Intelligence Agency, as well as many of them have contacts with many of the Pakistani-based radical Islamic networks, as well as the global jihadi networks could exploit the pathetic situation of Rohingya and can ask them to take up arms against the Indian state. That has been a major security concern. Anyway, this decision of the Government of India was challenged in Supreme Court by two Rohingya petitioners. And they have, in their petitions, they have claimed that the Rohingya people are a peace-loving community, and most of them have no link with any terror activity. And if the Government of India finds out that if any Rohingya are linked with the terrorism, it can deal with those issues in a case-by-case manner. That is what the Rohingya petitioners challenged in Supreme Court. Now, this Rohingya issue is a highly complex issue for India due to the fact that the Rohingya issue will be affecting our relationship with two of our most important neighbors, Myanmar as well as Bangladesh. So let us take a look at how will the Rohingya issue affect the already highly complex India, Myanmar, Bangladesh triangle. During Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent visit to Myanmar, in the joint statement made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi along with the State Councillor of Myanmar, Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, they referred only to the terrorism problem in Myanmar's Rakhine state, and they never mentioned about the refugee crisis. And this was seen as India's support to Myanmar on the Rohingya issue. The Ministry of External Affairs on August 26, after that militant attack by ARS, again made a statement again supporting Myanmar over the issue of the Rohingya militants. For India, the Rohingya issue is again made further complex due to the fact that The Rakhine state in Myanmar is the key province in implementing the Kaladan multimodal transport corridor, and the Sittwe port that India is building in Myanmar is located at the Rakhine state of Myanmar. But the Bangladeshi government, again, the Bangladeshi government has been a key ally of India, especially the Sheikh Hasina government. It has been a staunch ally of India on various South Asian organizations like SAARC, and Bangladesh again has been a key partner of India on the revival of BIMSTEC and all. Bangladeshi government wants India to join them in putting pressure on Myanmar over the Rohingya issue. And India's support to Myanmar on the Rohingya issue is seen as encouraging the Burmese security forces or the Burmese military or Tatmadaw in taking actions against the Rohingya refugees. And when the Myanmar's military is taking these kind of actions, this will create more and more influx of Rohingya refugees into Bangladesh, and that will again create more and more socio-economic challenges in Bangladesh. So the Bangladeshi government raised this issue with India at several levels. For India, both Myanmar as well as Bangladesh are very key countries. Bangladesh is again very important in dealing with the internal security challenges as well as providing connectivity to the northeastern region and all. But Myanmar is India's gateway to Southeast Asia also. So India cannot alienate both of these countries. And anyway, due to the Bangladeshi pressure on the Rohingya issue, there has been a shift in the MEA's stand on the Rohingya issue. On September 9, the Ministry of External Affairs made a new statement saying that India remains deeply concerned about the situation on the Rakhine state as well as the outflow of refugees from the Rakhine state. And this was seen as India making a shift on its policy on the Rohingya issue, and this was welcomed and well received in Dhaka. So India did this kind of a shift in policy due to the constant pressure from the Sheikh Hasina government, and which has been a very friendly government to India. India's overtures to Myanmar is seen as a counter to China. See, now take a look at this map. For both of the emerging Asian powers, India and China, Myanmar is a very, very crucial country. For India, Myanmar is the only Southeast Asian country or the only ASEAN country which shares a land border with India. So Myanmar is seen as India's gateway to the ASEAN countries. Then again, take a look at Myanmar from the Chinese point of view. For China, Myanmar is seen as a gateway to the Indian Ocean region. So for both these countries, Myanmar is a very crucial country. Again, Myanmar has several resources like natural gas. So Myanmar will be crucial in energy security of India also. And China has built up a growing presence in Myanmar. China has made natural gas pipelines connecting China and Myanmar. And India has been proposing energy swap deals linking India, Myanmar, China and Russia. Means if Russia can supply natural gas to China, then India can take up China's share of natural gas from Myanmar. India has been proposing this kind of deals with Myanmar. Now when the Rohingya issue happened, China offered support to Myanmar at the United Nations amid the Rohingya crisis. And it is widely believed that China will block all efforts to internationalize the Rohingya refugee crisis, because China has around US $7.3 billion investment and infrastructure construction plans in the Rakhine state of Myanmar. So Chinese have massive stake in the Rakhine state like India. And again, China might be blocking any attempt by other countries like the Sunni Muslim countries and all in order to get the Security Council to criticize Yangon on the Rohingya issue. So China is seen as the major ally of Myanmar at the United Nations over the Rohingya issue. Again, there is a huge geopolitical angle to the Rohingya issue. Although many of the Sunni Arab countries wants to criticize Myanmar over the Rohingya issue, and again, many of the Western democracies wants to take a stand against Myanmar on the Rohingya issue. For example, countries like Britain and France have asked the Myanmarese government to solve the Rohingya issue. But for But India and the United States considers Myanmar as a bulwark against China. And again, China wants to use Myanmar in a geopolitical manner to get a space into the Indian Ocean region. So there is a huge geopolitical play at Myanmar, and due to this huge factor of geopolitics, both India and China doesn't want to take an active stand on the Rohingya issue against the Myanmarese government. But it has often been accused that the Myanmarese government is pushing the Rohingya to extremism. And this is such a huge humanitarian crisis, and sometimes we have to abandon geopolitics when dealing with this kind of high-end humanitarian crises. Aung San Suu Kyi, widely believed to be the 21st century symbol of freedom and democracy, has been highly criticized on the Rohingya issue. She has been reluctant to make any direct or open commitments towards the Rohingya issue. The Myanmar State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, who is again the de facto leader of Myanmar, has been criticized heavily on the Rohingya issue. There has even been calls from the Arab world to take back her Nobel Prize for Peace. She has been reluctant to make any direct and open commitments towards the Rohingya issue, fearing that there could be a huge political backlash from home. Aung San Suu Kyi is probably the only person who can solve the Rohingya issue. But many of the Western thinkers often criticize Aung San Suu Kyi blatantly without without taking a look at the complex political situation in Myanmar. Although Aung San Suu Kyi won a landslide election victory in late 2015, the problem is that even now, majority of the political power in Myanmar is being controlled by the Myanmarese military or Tatmadaw. And even now, the three key ministries in Myanmar, Defense, Home Affairs and Border Affairs ministries, are being controlled by Tatmadaw or the military. So the civilian government is basically at a very constrained space when dealing with the military now itself. And if it takes that kind of an active stand on the Rohingya crisis, it might be alienated by the majority Buddhist population in Myanmar also. And this could be used by the military in Myanmar in order to harm the interests of the democratic government. So even the democracy in Myanmar could be at stake if Aung San Suu Kyi takes that kind of a stringent stance on the Rohingya issue. But still, Aung San Suu Kyi, being a leader of human rights as well as democracy, should be more accommodative of the concerns of the Rohingyas. And India, being the world's largest democracy, has a role to play in the Rohingya issue. India could try to bring Myanmar as well as Bangladesh on a platform so that more dialogues and diplomacy can be arranged between the two countries, and the Rohingya issue can be solved in an amicable, peaceful manner. Again, another organization that has a huge role to play on the Rohingya issue is the ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The ASEAN should again take a more proactive stand in solving the Rohingya issue. So that's all about the Rohingya crisis.